Hi, welcome to the Visionista podcast. I'm your host, Jessica East of Nor Marketing and PR. This podcast is for entrepreneurs where we talk about business and work-life balance. Hi, this is Jessica East. Welcome to the Visionista podcast. Today, I am very excited. We are doing our first ever roundtable, and I have some girlfriends here with me. Let's go around the room here and introduce ourselves. Christy, how's about you go first?
Hey guys, my name is Christy Schlachter. I am the Director of Marketing for Innovative Sterilization Technologies in OneTray. So I work on company strategy and manage vendors and do all of our fun marketing things. I also do all the graphic design work for us. So I kind of play the role of kind of creative director and director of marketing at the same time. So
cool, many hats.
Yes.
Awesome. Brianna, how's about you?
Hi, I'm Brianna Wooten. I'm Director of Marketing for HEPE. We're a design engineering firm headquartered in Dayton, Ohio, but we have offices in 5 different locations and we do work nationally and internationally. So just started with the team a few weeks ago and really excited about my new role.
Awesome. Yeah, congratulations. I saw that update come through on LinkedIn. I'm like, wait, I just talked to her about some stuff someplace else. So
yeah. Well, you're still on the team's list there, so you know.
Awesome.
I'll definitely keep you in mind for work we need here as well.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, Betsy, you're next.
Hi, I'm Betsy Newman. I am VP of Newman Sanitary Gasket, and we are a manufacturing company. And my role is owner of the company is do what needs done today. So
also many hats.
Right.
And last but not least, Melanie.
Hey, I'm Melanie Red, owner of Melanie Red Performance Training. I am in the fitness business, both in person and virtually, corporate wellness, and I am also a strength and speed coach for high school athletes, working mostly with high school football players.
Awesome. So thank you all for being here with me today virtually, obviously, since we're still in month, 11 of COVID 2020 pandemic. So looking forward to that vaccine. But I realize we're all busy. We are all very important ladies. So I am privileged and honored that you would take the time out and chat with me today. Our topic is imposter syndrome. And this was a term that I didn't know of until a couple of years ago. And it has a lot of bits and pieces to it, but I found that it wasn't just me who was, thinking maybe I shouldn't be running my business, or, sometimes you can also feel like a fraud or like you're not qualified enough to do what you're doing. I always thought it was just me. And then I started to see other women talk about it. That's where I learned what it was called. And I learned that I wasn't by myself. So I really am excited that we can all talk about it today. Each of you have mentioned that you've kind of had those feelings yourself here and there. And so I think it's important to talk about that and then how we get through it. So the first question that I have for all of you, and then we'll have to be careful not to step over each other on our internet connections today. When did you figure out that you were struggling with imposter syndrome? Brianna, you can go first. Looks like you have something to say.
So sure. So I've always been somebody who performed pretty well at school and some of the other things I did, but I remember my first real memory of like struggling with this in my adult life was when I went to grad school. And I went at the University of Kentucky, and they do something a little unique. They throw their master's degree students, which is what I was pursuing, in with all their PhD students.
Oh.
So you get mixed in with people who've got 2 or 3 years of experience in a graduate study program. And so I remember being in one of my first classes, and they were talking about stuff like epistemology and all this stuff. And everybody else is like, pitching in and talking about what they know about it and all this stuff. And I'm going like, what? Like, I've always been somebody who was more like at the top of the class, did really well academically. And so I remember I was about a month or two in, and I remember calling my dad and saying something like, Dad, are you going to be disappointed in me if I drop out? Because I was just like, I don't know if I can hang with this. And so that's really my first memory of dealing with it. And I will say, not to get too far off in another topic, but I find that when you experience feelings like that, or when you experience emotions like that, sometimes there's a lot of talk about people like talking about grit or stick to itness or whatever. But really, I always think it's like you just do it. Like it's a silly Nike slogan, but it's like if you just do the thing that you think like you can't do and you get it done, you really, there's a whole lot to be said about actually experiencing it so that you don't have to feel like I can't anymore. And so that, I think that was my first real experience with that, and with like having to like push through those feelings of inadequacy, and like I didn't know what everybody else was talking about, and to feel like I actually belonged there.
Mel, you're nodding.
Yeah. I mean, in my line of work and you know, the fitness space, it's interesting because I'm doing I have a pilot program right now. I'm doing a body image series for women. And you know, like how we compare ourselves to these images that you see, and because I've struggled with that, you know, myself from time to time. And you know, in my line of work, whether if it's fitness, those images, you know, that I get bombarded with are like people with like perfect bodies and you know, have like crazy muscles and abs and, you know, stuff like that. So it's really easy to get into this web where, you know, you think, well, I don't look exactly like that, so I'm probably not the prototype. I probably don't measure up or whatever. But that's easier for me to overcome because really that's just like my own internalizing, you know, of that messaging. But when it comes to the strength and conditioning space, so I found myself, you know, in this field, and I kind of stumbled into it a few years ago. And it's a male dominated field, right? And it's dominated by men who are 10 years and 20 years younger than me. I'm 46. So here I am. I have to physically be able to do these things, and not just to be able to do them. I have to teach other people, children, how to do them with limited attention spans. And I have to be able to correct them and, you know, coach them and all of these things. So it's probably about like once a year I go through like deep imposter syndrome where I'm sure everybody who's hired me is crazy, and they just don't know that I don't know what I'm doing. And even though I have a million credentials and I have mentors and I have continuing education and I have everyday application of my work. So in my line of work, I get to learn something. I could learn something at 10 in the morning. I could go and apply it immediately that afternoon and see if I'm any good at it or if it works, and I can make adjustments in real time. So there's no reason for me to not get good at, you know, certain things. Yet this imposter syndrome, you know, creeps up from time to time. And it's interesting though, because I recently discovered that pretty much all strength coaches have this issue from time to time. Male strength coaches, female strength coaches, doesn't matter. Like we all have, you know, these feelings. And you know, so for me that was like really comforting when I realized I'm not the only person who, you know, from time to time feels like a fraud. And you know, I just realized like, okay, I can just let that suffocate me, which I think there have been weeks of my life where I've actually not been great at my work, or not just worked very much because I felt like I wasn't like firing on all cylinders and I just wasn't, you know, sharp enough or capable enough or, you know, whatever. But one, like the most important thing that I've figured out as I stumble across like the parts of my work that I'm not great at, because nobody's great at every single thing, especially as a business owner and as a solo business owner. I don't have anyone else. I could say, hey, you're better at this than I am, so you go out and do that, right? I just have to figure out how to get good enough and then eventually great at, certain things. So what I do is I just like, I find something when I'm dealing, when I'm in my feelings about imposter syndrome, I find something that I could learn. So it might be a course, it might be scheduling a phone call with someone who's been in the business a million years or whatever, and I will learn something and I will apply it immediately so that I can just focus on that and get out of like these, feelings of I don't belong, I'm not good enough. I can't believe these people are putting me in charge of the well-being and bodies of 70, football players. They're going to find me out. And, it's just, in retrospect, it's so ridiculous. Like, it's ridiculous. But in the moment, it's not ridiculous. It's like a really legit fear, I think.
It's easy to be overcome by those things. Betsy, same question. When did you first feel that maybe you were struggling with imposter syndrome?
So I started in the family business right out of college, and I was being very much groomed, and I'd worked in the family business since I was 13. So like I had done jobs in our factory. I had done customer service work for years at that point. Like I knew our product, I knew our company, I knew what we did. And I go to these conferences, and I'm in a very male dominated field. When I started going to these conferences, they were out of 150 to 200 participants. I was one of 3, 4, 5 women in the room.
Yeah.
Now it's like 20 women in the room. It's better, but we're not like
going in the right
representation is important. And so like, the boys club is the boys club. And, like I'm working alongside my father and our longtime salesperson and these other people who, are well established and much older and have a lot of relationships. And I'm working on building these, but like, you just feel like you don't belong. Like I was young, I was female, and like, if people wanted to talk business, they weren't talking business to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it made me, you really feel like, is this where I should be? Like, do I not know what I'm talking about? Do they not trust me as a source of information? So it was very unsettling, and still to this day, as the guys want to have the boys club and they want to talk business with my male counterparts. Like, but when it's a problem, they call me on the phone to fix it. Mm-hmm. So you kind of, it's still challenging being in this male dominated field where it's very much an old white men club.
Yeah. No, I hear that. Christy? I think your sound went away.
How about that?
There we go. We're good.
Sorry, I was muted. I want to apologize because if an Amazon truck goes by, my dogs go absolutely crazy. So I'm going to stay muted. But if they go crazy, I will mute. So
I think all of us are in the same boat. So
right. So it's interesting. I'm so glad to be in this conversation with you guys because, like you, I have felt it, but I thought I was the only one in the world that felt it. And even joining in this conversation, I'm questioning myself, am I even relevant enough to have input in this conversation? And that's terrible, but like,
yes, you are. So full stop.
Like it happens, it's just like, man. But so kind of like Brianna, like with school and everything, I was always the top of my class. I was always the leader in sports, the captain. When I left school, I had 7 years of college. I was a coach for a traveling softball team, and I always held like leadership type positions. And I'm an artist, so creative people are weird in their own ways, as we all know, but I also learned over the years that a good creative person is hard to find. But it took a very long time for me to get there because so many past employers just made me feel like everybody else, like, oh, we can go and get anybody, and you know, you're nothing special. And when I looked at it, it was because I had built my career working for manufacturing companies, and a lot of that mindset doesn't, you know, bleed in well with like the marketing and creative space, because they are two completely different things. They have completely different needs, they function differently. And everywhere I had put myself in my career wanted to get into the creative space, and it was a wall. It was just really hard. So most of my imposter syndrome, I think, comes from my education, because I did have 7 years of college and I should have like a PhD with how much college I had. But I'm like a semester away from getting my next degree, and I just haven't finished. And it's because I've gotten some really great jobs over time, and I'm 38 now and I have a toddler. And, you know, so a lot of the jobs I apply for nowadays, you have to put your resume in. And if you don't have a master's in marketing or something like that, people don't even consider you.
Yep.
And so the last couple jobs I've had, I have put myself in front of people and created my own opportunities for them to see me instead of seeing my resume. Because as a creative person, your portfolio is what drives you, and how you come out of situations creatively is what drives you. It's really been hard for me to be seen. And I have found over the years, I question my worth a lot. Excuse me. When I start a new career and someone asks me what I would like my pay to be, I shrink down under the table. Like, I don't know, like, how much do you think I'm worth?
Amazon truck.
Yeah. Like, that's what I'm like, what do you think I'm worth? Because I had questioned it for so long that I didn't even have a number to give people. And then I found, you know, it used to be,
Question anyway. I think that's a trick question.
It used to be like, well, maybe it's because I'm still new and I'm young and I'm still getting into my career. You know, I'm not going to ask for that much because it's not realistic. And I wasn't paying attention to how good I was as a creative person. So I lived that life for a little bit. And then you're 12 years into it, still having those thoughts. And you're like, wait a minute, I shouldn't still be having those thoughts.
Yeah.
But, you know, it took a boss to see me and see my worth before I had to prove it to him. And that was like the point where I'm like, you know what? You're right. Like, no one's going to be able to talk to me like that again, because like you finally see me and you see my worth. And it's been hard just because you just wait for that person to see you and to give you that confidence that you are what you are and you are capable of doing what you're doing. And that's kind of been when I realized it sort of into my career. And I still have those feelings, but it's it's been a ride for sure. But that's kind of when it all started for me.
Yeah. A quick aside before we go to my next question. You said you created opportunities for yourself to get around those algorithms. And it's true. Anybody who's looked for a job probably in the last 5 years, there's a million check boxes and drop downs, and the job poster has a specific thing. Like, they want so many years experience, so much education. If you don't check those boxes, your resume doesn't even make it through to the next step. So how did you get around that so that you were showcasing yourself?
So can I say something real quick before we go into because honestly, Chris, I just want to say, like, I love what you had to share. I was really reflecting when you were talking about that boss. Like, I don't know if you guys have heard the saying before, that like, I'd rather work for a good boss at a bad company than a bad boss at a good company. And that is so true. And I think if as leaders and people in leadership positions, it behooves us to pass that along, to show other people their worth and value, because I had the same exact experience in my first leadership role with my previous employer. And if I hadn't had someone who had confidence in me to do the job and hadn't forced me to consider it, I would have backed out of that opportunity and it would have changed the trajectory of my career. So I just want to say, like, I really appreciate you speaking out about that. It's okay to need other people, and it's okay to, it doesn't make us any less. Like, it's okay to need that kind of external validation sometimes, somebody to tell us or knock us around and say, no, you're fine, you're doing a good job. And I think that's really, it just spoke to me. So thank you.
What's that old saying? It takes 7 positives to get rid of 1 negative, like in terms of comments. So, it does.
But to answer your question, so the first thing I did when I got out of college, can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I got in the phone book and I called every single company that started with the word print, because I knew I wanted to get into print and creative. So nobody saw me, but I called everybody in the phone book and landed my first job. Had a couple jobs in between. I was found one time by a headhunter, which really was like, oh man, someone actually sees me on paper and thinks I'm cool rather than just meeting me. So that was an interesting experience. But the other opportunity I had, actually applied for a position in the company I knew I wasn't qualified for and I didn't want, but I knew I just had to get in front of the person who was hiring so that I could talk to them, because I could bring something to that company they didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally had that interview and he had me talk to somebody else in the company the same day and they hired me in 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't even have a position open.
So you Trojan horsed it, basically.
They created one basically so that they could bring that experience to the company. And then another one I did, I actually had put together a document of like ROI as using me as a third party person or a vendor versus bringing me on board. And I was able to kind of prove, the reason to bring me on full time. And so I sort of I try to create opportunities, because like you said, it's not as easy anymore just to know you're going to go talk to the right person.
Okay.
And so
I'm going to steal that idea, Chris, if you don't mind. When you were talking about education and somewhere along the lines, how you feel like you need more in order to be considered for certain things. So I don't have a college degree, and most of the people in my field have an exercise science degree. And the reason why I don't have a college degree is because I got pregnant when I was 21 and I dropped out because I had to, I needed money to keep a baby alive and thriving. So, all those years went by and I didn't finish. And then when I started going into working with athletes, I thought, okay, I need to go finish and I'm going to get this exercise science degree. And at that time, I was working with a mentor who has that degree and several others and a master's and is a strength coach, bless you, and physical therapist and an athletic trainer. Like, he has tons of degrees. And I was like scheduled the call with him. That was like the topic that day. And I was like, okay, he's going to give me advice on where I'm going to go finish school. His advice was, you already own a business. You're already doing the work. Don't go get the degree. It's a complete waste of time and money. They're not going to teach you anything you don't already know. In fact, you could go teach those courses right now. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay, well, that's great. That's going to save me, time and money. So up until that point, I was having the imposter syndrome over not having the piece of paper. Mm-hmm. Incidentally, I've gotten glimpses into those programs at colleges that I was thinking about going to, and they're way undereducating these kids and are shoving them into master's programs, which are also way undereducating them. And so I'm like, yeah, there's no way I'm going to do that. And that's, the pool where I pull interns from. And so I respect, that people are accomplishing that. But for me, I'm just going to keep pressing forward without it. But there is a very long list of jobs I would never be considered for because I don't have that piece of paper, even though I have 9 years of experience. So but for me, that's why I own a business, because I'm like, I can decide what I get paid and what my work is, and what work I go after. But there's a lot of things that I'm like, man, I could totally do that. Those people need me. It's too bad they won't get me because, they're requiring somebody that has, a degree. But maybe I'm just going to start applying for those as if I'm like applying for a job. And then to get in front of that person, that's like a really phenomenal idea. I hope you don't care, but I'm going to steal it. I'm totally doing that. I'm probably going to get kicked out of people's offices, but that's okay.
Well, I have a question for you based off what you just said. Because like I heard you say you hire interns and things like that. Like, have you ever felt, because sometimes like especially in the creative space, I've been in it so long, I'm like 15 years in, that I haven't had college in a long time. And I know there's new things being learned.
Let's not talk about years. That makes me feel old.
I have to like self-educate on some things, but like I'm at a position where I need to possibly hire an intern to help with a little bit of things. Do you ever feel like when you hire an intern or someone that has a master's and you don't, that you're like you feel, I don't know what I'm trying to say, like do I want to hire an intern that has a master's because I don't? Are they going to see me as not knowing what I know, because I don't have a master's? Are they going to come in and completely know more than me at this point, when really that's so untrue? Like they have a lot of knowledge with schooling, but when you have the experience in the portfolio for 15 years, that's what drives it. But it still is in my mind. So do you ever feel that way? Like not having that high education and getting those interns?
Certainly, to a degree. And when I started going down, the intern road about this time last year, and then I don't have any right now because COVID restrictions and whatnot, and thinking like, okay, so I'm going to have this person and I'm going to teach them the tricks of the trade. And then they're going to technically be more educated than me. But you have to realize that really, in some professions, that really is just on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And, for me, and realizing in the first week of having an intern, realizing how little they're learning, and asking him questions like, so have you guys covered this yet? And he's a senior at this point, getting ready to graduate. No, never heard of that concept. I'm like, whoa, really? How have you not? And I'm just like, wow, okay, well, I'm going to teach you that because you need to know this. And then I think, that's how the imposter syndrome really, like, you can get rid of it by either learning something or teaching someone else something. But at the end of the day, every single one of us, whatever, however we've had to get our education. So you all, some of you have gotten yours, the traditional way. That was not my path. So I have accumulated certifications, and some of them are pretty lame. But I've also been lucky enough to find mentors who can point me in the right directions of really high quality certifications that also come with a high level of mentorship from people who are, working at a higher level than I am. And I think, if you can find that, like find your person that can mentor you if you haven't already, and then understand like you're going to pay that forward by helping the next person, the next up and coming Chris, and kind of share with them like, yeah, you go get that degree. You're going to be so happy that you did that. But let me tell you about the things you're not going to learn there. And let me help you, and let me share with you what my mistakes were. And that's a lot of what I do with whether it's interns or I do like business mentorship for people like me who are trying to get into especially like into the strength and conditioning space, because it's really hard to get into. And just kind of sharing with them, like, here's the mistakes I made and here's how I fixed them. And here's how you're going to avoid that. Here's what not to do. And then, when you find yourself in those situations, having, somebody who can say, here's what you are, going to do. I think that's like the best way to overcome, what we think our shortcomings are. We all believe that we have shortcomings, but I think if I were to look at your work experience and I were to look at the less work experience with someone who had, more degrees than you, I would be like, that's the girl I want. I want her.
I would agree. I would agree, Melanie. And actually, the only thing I wanted to say is that I will take somebody with experience over somebody with a degree any day. I taught as an adjunct professor, and you get what you put into it in an education. And if you are somebody who's just going to classes, like I worked my entire way through college and graduated with no debt because I worked jobs. I worked at newspapers. I did public relations consulting. I did graphic design work. I did all of those things on the side, and I had like a consulting portfolio by the time I graduated. I would never hire somebody with no work experience. I have zero interest in it, and I think that it's okay for an internship, but I would never hire an employee who has zero experience. And I tell kids that all the time when I go to college classes and I do resume workshops. I say, if you're not getting experience right now, you are at the bottom of the pile, and I would never hire you. I'm just honest with them about it. So,
yeah. And even if the experience is like volunteering for a nonprofit or something, it can be unpaid as long as it's, in the professional realm somewhere. And I wanted to briefly circle back to the original, do I get an intern in who maybe knows extra things? Should I feel weird about that? I work with interns pretty regularly, and Christy and I are in pretty much the same boat with like what we do and what we need and the types of people we're looking for. And I think it's great, the stuff that they can teach me about technology, because Creative Suite comes out with a new version, every 6 months, 12 months. And for the most part, it's the same thing every time, but maybe a button has moved or there's a new feature. Same thing for social media. There's always something new. There's always a new button or a new feature to use. I'm busy running my business at this point. What I do is a lot of strategy. The team handles a lot of the actual fulfillment of things at this point. So I don't really have time to go find out what is the latest feature in TikTok this week. And so it's really great for me to know that I have people on my team that I can trust who are totally immersed in that space. And then for me, it's about trust. And that's been something that's been difficult for me because, I've been let down a couple of times. So for me, trusting my team, trusting my decisions to hire someone, whether it's an intern or an actual person or a freelancer or whatever, trusting my gut to know that this person is good. They've got a really great book of work. Maybe they have somebody that's vouched for them, trusting that initial feeling that this person is good for the team. And then, teaching them what I know about business, because I think it was Brianna that said this, Melanie did. You don't know in class how it is in real life. I probably had a year or two learning curve when I started my first job out of college, just because I'm sending files to people overseas. I was a graphic designer working with copywriters and marketing people and salespeople, doing mock-ups and doing all these other things that my teachers never told me. Like, they might have mentioned it as an aside, but we didn't really put a lot of time into, here's how to collect this giant file and all these pieces to send to China so that they can take 3 months to produce this calendar and send it back. So, there was a huge learning curve. And I think everybody expected that. Obviously, if you're fresh out of school, you don't know how to do these things yet. But, there's a lot of give and take in those relationships. And I think that's fine. It's a learning experience for the interns. And in many cases, it's a learning experience for the person who's hired that intern, because there's all kinds of stuff that we just don't have time to be in a constant phase, of learning. So I wouldn't think anything, more of that. I would be like, this is a great opportunity to learn some new things. I have all this cool stuff I can teach them, and, see how it goes. I think it has the potential to be a really, really great experience for both of you. So good on you for hiring an intern. Students need a chance to get out and showcase their skills. My next question, and I think some of us have touched on this maybe, so we're getting kind of long in the tooth here, so I'll skip that. It was, is this something that you've always struggled with, or did it start as you advanced in your career? And I think we've all kind of touched on that a little bit. So the last question that I really wanted to make sure we talked about today, how do you balance those feelings associated with imposter syndrome with your drive, your own, I want to move to the next level, I want to do this thing, your to-do list? I mean, nobody can really just, be totally immersed in their feelings and not get things done. So how do you balance those feelings with the need to continue to grow and achieve and get things done? Jump in anytime.
Well, I know for me, like, it's interesting that you ask that, because it truly has to be a balance. So for instance, growing up playing sports or going to school, parents, coaches, everything always taught me there's always somebody better than you, which is supposed to drive you to always, try to get better and hone in on your craft and all those things. So I'm a very driven, passionate person. So I always hunt down the people that are better than me, and I try to learn from them and kind of get myself to that next level as I go. But it can have a reverse effect. Like, I know you guys are out there. I do the best I can every day, but I know there are people better. Those are people I strive to be like, so that I can move to the next level, but also knowing that there's all these people that are so much better than me anyway. If someone is interested in me or wants to hire me or is headhunting me, I'm like, why don't you go find the people that are better than me? Like, why do you want me? That doesn't make any sense, So like, I have to check myself constantly, like when I have those thoughts that, there's a difference in pursuing people that are better to make yourself better. Or even back to the intern question, I love hiring interns and working with interns, because I believe if you hire people better than you, that's just going to make the company better and make your department better. Don't just try to be the smartest person in the room. Nobody likes that. But yeah, it's interesting to balance trying to find the people that are better than you and work with the people that are better than you. So that's something I struggle with.
Awesome.
For me, it's what I learned, and I didn't learn this on my own. It really is something that my mentor helped me with, is, when you come across, like when you realize there are shortcomings or things that you're not great at, for me, it's like finding out who is really great at that, like legitimately great and known to be great at it. And how do I get in front of them? And so, I mean, most of the people in my realm of, the world are really easy to access, because they're on Twitter and Instagram, and they want their email address out there, because they need work. They're struggling to get work just like I am, right? Especially now. But for me, that's how I always seek to find the balance is, okay, here's this thing. It's happening in my head, and I'm struggling with it. And there might be some truth to it. Maybe I do need to get better at this. And so this person knows what I need to know, and I'm just going to reach out to them. The worst that can happen is that they can be like, no, I don't want to talk to you. That has never happened to me, though. So, I think there are a lot of people out there who are approachable. And then, also in finding that balance, if someone reaches out to me and was like, do you have time for me to pick your brain? Even if I don't have time, I say yes. I don't, because to me, it's like, I can't really pay back the people who have helped me, whether it's just helped me with my mindset or helped me learn a skill or pointed me in the right direction of where to get skills. I can't really pay them back, because there's nothing their career is ahead of mine. So for me, it's like if a young person wants to talk about how I got work in sports, then I will be honest with them. If I really don't have time that week, I'll be like, I cannot talk to you this week. I'm so sorry. But can you message me on Monday, and then we'll set up a time, for next week. I don't commit to trying to remember to circle back to them, because chances are I get wrapped up in, crazy schedules. But, I think that's an important aspect as well, is reaching out to people who can help you, and then helping someone else, and that's where I find like the middle ground.
In addition to like reaching out and trying to improve your skill set, like I also like have an inventory of knowing like I have these really strong skill sets. Like I am very good at these things. And maybe sometimes you just need to focus on what you're really good at and not try to stretch yourself or improve yourself and stuff your weekend. Like that stuff is maybe a business owner that you delegate, or you ask somebody else to do that has a better grasp on those things. And just because you're not good at one thing doesn't mean you're not really good at your job or your whatever that is. So remembering what you're good at and trying to stay in your lane sometimes is a great way to manage those expectations, and just remind yourself like, hey, I'm very good at this.
I really appreciate you talking about that, Betsy, because for me, I alluded to a little bit earlier, when I first took over my first director's role several years ago, I took over in a time that was really fraught with a lot of change and very, very high demands. And I was working crazy hours, and it was very stressful. And in the middle of that, I was like going, can I really do this? This is insane. And again, I had that boss who took the time to talk to me when I was really close to just giving up, and saying things like, no, and he's like, well, you just need to take some time and you need to think about it, because I know you can do this. You just need to decide if you want to. And I did. I spent the whole weekend thinking about that. And I remember when he first asked me if I wanted the opportunity, he said, do you want this job? And I said, yeah, I do. Immediately, because I knew I'd wanted it for a while. And then he says, do you think you can do it? And I said, yes, I know I can do it. So it wasn't that I didn't know I could do the work. It was just like, am I really ready for this? And so I really found that having somebody who has confidence in you is super helpful. It doesn't always have to be like your direct boss. I actually, not everybody can afford this or has the resources for this, but I actually hired a career coach because I was having so much trouble. It was such a challenging time. And that was like invaluable for me. So it doesn't have to be someone you hire, but having like a mentor or somebody to speak with who's an objective person who can help you sort of reflect without like being harshly critical or giving you false praise, like somebody who can really like help you reflect on what you're doing. And I love how you focused on strengths. Like I know what I'm really good at. And I don't have to worry about being the expert at everything. It is okay to like delegate or to acknowledge what are not my best skill set and to own that. And so I always focus on my strengths. And I find that I really don't really struggle with imposter syndrome as much as I used to. And I'll be honest, like once you've been through like the crazy year I was in 2019 with like managing emergency operations through tornadoes and mass shootings and everything else that happened in Dayton, it's like, to some degree, like I said, you just do it. And then when you're done with it, you're like, you know what, I can do that. Like I've been through all that. All this other stuff doesn't scare me anymore. And so I think some of it's just walking through the fear, walking through the discomfort, getting used to being uncomfortable, like just getting used to it and just doing it. And I think it loses its power. It loses its power once you've done it for a while. And I will say the one thing that I hope everybody can like leave with is this is something that my coach told me that I really loved. I was talking about something and how I felt like I had to prove myself still. And he asked me a question. He said, do you feel like you're doing the job? I was like, yeah. He's like, do you feel like you're doing good? Do you feel like you're doing well? I'm like, yeah, I know I am. He's like, then why do you feel like you need to prove yourself anymore? And he said, I want you to just write something down on a piece of paper that says, I don't have to prove myself to anyone. And just put it, and I put it on a piece of paper and I put it in my little ticker folder, my tracking sheet. And like, every once in a while, it pops up in my tracking sheet to remind me I don't have to prove myself to anyone anymore. And I think it's it's just something I like hold close to my heart whenever I'm starting to feel anxious. Like, can I really do this? I just say, I don't have to prove myself. I know I can do this. I'm just going to keep trying. And so I think it's like a blessing to have the support of the people I've had in my life. And it's really cool to be a part of this conversation with all of you. I really admire, like, I just really admire, especially you as female leaders and business owners, like what you guys are doing. It's been really cool to hear what you had to say.
Same. I really appreciate, again, everybody taking time to chat today about this. I have become verklempt a couple times during our conversation. I'm so proud of us, for keep going, even though sometimes it's been uncomfortable to keep going, or we've had doubts, or whether there are doubts or whether it's kind of doubts. Betsy, yours sounded very situational, maybe coming from people around you instead of from within yourself. So I'm proud of us for going and keep moving and keep doing. And I hope anybody who's listening, if you find yourself in the same boat, either presently or, you struggle with this, I hope you can remember some of these things, moving forward. So I end every podcast with a final thought. So if we want to just kind of go around the virtual Zoom room here, if you had like two sentences, a final thought to kind of wrap up, imposter syndrome and working through that, what would you like to leave with our listeners today?
Oh, I'm already unmuted, so I'll do mine first. Everybody has value. Every job has value. And we would a whole lot better to appreciate the value of all people and all workers and all jobs instead of comparing ourselves all the time to others.
Cosign. Mel?
I'll go. One of the things that I tell people that I coach, whether it's athletes, clients, or other business owners, is that there's always going to be someone or something that's going to get in your way. Don't be that person. Get out of your own way. I do it. We all do it. And you got to catch yourself. And I think imposter syndrome is one of those ways where we tend to get in our own way. So get out of your own way.
I like it. Betsy?
I think, we all have our special gifts and talents to share with the world, and just go share those and, focus on what you have and not what you don't have.
I think that is good. Christy? Uh-oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. Mine would be just to keep pushing, and like, I know a lot of us feel imposter syndrome based on what everybody else thinks and says, but at some point you just have to know, like, okay, I do this all the time. I'm confident in it, and just try not to let those people affect you, and try to filter the people that see you for you and what you're worth, and the people that don't see you and understand what you're worth. And then you need to focus your energy on the left lane of the people that see you. That would be what I would say.
I love it. All right. Thank you, everyone. As usual, I will put links to LinkedIn accounts in our notes section if you would like to connect with any of these ladies and follow them on social. Until next time, this has been the Visionista.